Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining. Troy, thank you for that little intro here. Super excited to chat with everyone. We'll get into some introductions here. Um, First and foremost, as Troy was saying, my name is Megan Higgins. I am a program coordinator with BrookSource. BrookSource, if you're not familiar with us, we are an IT and engineering recruiting consulting firm. Here in the Valley is where I'm located, but we do have locations nationwide, so all over the place. And then I run our Elevate program specifically, which we'll chat about in a slide or two here, but I'll let Dustin give his intro.
Greetings. Can everybody hear me?
All good on my end.
All right, good. My name is Dustin Fennell. I'm a seasoned IT executive with a robust background in strategic planning, operational efficiency, and team development. And currently I serve as a technical operations manager for Amazon Web Services, where I lead a team of really talented engineers to drive innovation and enhance AWS service delivery. I have experience in multiple industries, including healthcare, higher education, and consulting. And I have a proven track record of implementing solutions that improve organizational performance and customer satisfaction. And I'm like super passionate about leveraging technology to create impactful results. And I'm even more passionate about helping others grow and succeed. So I'm really excited to be here with you today and share some insights on how you can be better prepared and better equipped to have a successful interview with Amazon.
Awesome.
So let me kind of just give you a little highlight. I'm sure Amazon is this little company on the internet that you may have heard about. It's actually one of the largest and most successful e-commerce and technology companies in the world. It was founded in 1994 by Jeff Bezos. And it started as an online bookstore in a garage, like many successful companies. And it has since expanded into a vast array of products, category services, electronics, clothing, furniture, groceries, and one of the largest parts of Amazon is their cloud computing, which is what I'm a part of. Amazon's headquartered in Seattle, and we employ over 1.6 million people globally. So it really makes it Amazon one of the largest private employers in the world. Last year, our revenue for Amazon was $574 billion, and AWS is Amazon's cloud computing division. We provide a wider range of on-demand computing services to individuals, companies, governments, and AWS was launched in 2006 and has quickly grown to become one of the world's largest and most comprehensive cloud computing platforms. We offer over 200 fully featured services, and our revenue just in our division last year was $90 billion. So kind of this rapid growth of AWS has created a high demand for cloud computing skills, certifications, and a need for highly skilled workforce, which is what we're going to focus on in today's session.
Awesome. So then, as I mentioned on the BrookSource side, we have a program called Elevate that I run. If you've been in any of my other workshops with GCU, you've probably heard the same information. So bear with me for a moment. But Elevate is something that I'm super, super passionate about. Basically, it is our workforce transformation program, and it's designed really to upskill associate level individuals who are either newer into the tech industry, coming back into the industry, and we have kind of all different avenues of individuals that we work with within this program. But basically within our Elevate program, we're able to provide additional technical training and for professional development to all of our consultants that are working, still working on site with one of our clients as well and getting that world experience. But wanted to draw some attention to kind of the four pipelines, if you will, or individuals that I'm tending to work with within our Elevate program. So that first one being emerging, that is, your traditional, your GCU grads, boot camp grads, or any other local or national partnerships that we have there. Diverse, obviously, a lot of these areas can be interchangeable, but we do have some diverse networking groups that we work with as well. Veteran is through our Project Patriot program. So it could be military veterans re-entering the workforce. Maybe they had some similar skills specifically in the military and are now looking to apply those into more of a tech-focused opportunity. And then reskilled, again, these individuals have probably been having their full careers, maybe they're teachers, maybe they're accountants. They realize that they have a passion for the tech industry. Maybe they then went to a boot camp or are kind of on that journey to get into IT. Again, our goal with this program is just to kind of help people get their foot in the door and leverage any of that additional training that we can do alongside of it. In terms of, what we're talking about today, so as Dustin will kind of let you guys know and has already begun to say, Amazon's definitely known for their really rigorous and challenging interview processes. They're assessing candidate skills, problem-solving abilities, any alignment with their company's leadership principles as well. So it's super important that when you are interviewing with, any company, but specifically Amazon today, really thoroughly prepare your understanding or prepare yourself by understanding the process and practicing your relevant skills, really developing a strong strategy to increase your chances of success in that interview. So today we're really going to focus on the essential tips and strategies to help you navigate the Amazon interview process effectively. This is going to be from understanding, the company's culture, their values, and then mastering different interview formats. These insights are all really going to help equip you with the knowledge and tools that you need to excel in an Amazon interview process. So we'll be chatting all about that today. I'm going to throw it on over to Dustin to chat a little bit more about Amazon specifically.
Great, thank you, Megan. So Amazon's mission is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, right? And everything we do is focused around the customer. And even when we talk about problems or challenges that we have or processes that we're going to put in place, you will hear different employees talk about working from the customer, working backwards from the customer, right? Always working backwards. And if something's going to be clunky, Amazon's going to take that clunkiness and try to make it the most smooth and exceptional experience for our customers. Our core values, why we have 16 leadership principles, these are probably the three leadership principles, and you may hear them called LPs. So like when you're talking to your recruiter, they might refer to LPs, but it's really customer obsession, ownership, and invent and simplify. Those are the three really core values that we have. And in our unique culture, we emphasize high performance, data-driven decision-making, and continuous innovation. And unlike a lot of companies where on their website, you see their mission, vision, values, you go in a break room and they're on a poster, but that's about it. You may hear about them during new employee orientation, but then that's it. These leadership principles are ingrained into everything we do. They drive the way we talk. They drive the way we hold each other accountable. They are core to how we evaluate annually our employees' performance. They're core to our goals that we set. And you'll often hear us in meetings talk about, learn and be curious, or disagree, have backbone, disagree, and commit, right? And so we use those in our language. And so these leadership principles are ingrained in everything we do. So understanding them is going to be really important because they guide our decision-making processes. And in your interview process, it'll be really crucial to demonstrate these leadership principles during that process and how you answer those questions. So why we have 16, the primary leadership principles for support engineering are really focused around customer obsession, bias for action, learn and be curious, earn trust, ownership, deep dive, deliver results, and then insist on the highest standards. So those are the things that you're going to want to really dive into and understand what those are and how do those leadership principles relate to the experiences that you've had in your schoolwork or in your other jobs, in your work history. So let's talk a little bit about the interview process itself. The first part of the process is interview screening, and there's usually two interview screens that you'll have. The first one will be with a recruiter, and this focus of this call is really more to ensure that you have the qualifications to move on in the process. Do you meet the minimum requirements or the minimum qualifications for that role? Do you have some of the preferred qualifications for that role? You'll get a little bit more information about the role. Amazon's job titles don't always align to what you think they might align to. I never would have searched for my level and role as, with my previous CIO and COO experience, I never would have searched for technical operations manager, right? Like that was just not in my wheelhouse or my thought process to search for an open role with that. So understanding what the roles are and what type of job search you should do is really important. And you can ask ChatGPT for some guidance on that, right? So I'm going to throw out some ChatGPT to use some AI tools to help you prepare, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail. But that first phone screen will be with a recruiter. It's really to more qualify you and make sure that you're a good alignment for the role that you're applying for. Once you pass that, and that recruiter is going to be your primary point of contact throughout your entire application process. Then you'll have a phone screen with either a hiring manager or a lead technical interviewer, depending on the type of role that you're applying for. That one, they will really dig in a little bit. They'll touch on a few leadership principles, and they'll just make sure that you're a good fit for that role and that you meet the bar to move forward in an interview. If you pass that process, then you move on to what we call the interview loop. I would really classify this more of an event than an interview. My interview was 5 hours long. All right, so that's not typically what I think of an interview. I think of about an hour, hour and a half, right? So this is a 5-hour event. I had 5 different managers. I was applying for a manager role, so I had 5 different managers that interviewed me, one at a time, so an hour each. I did have an hour break in there, so it was a 6-hour event, right? So I had I can't remember if I had 2 or 3 interviews, an hour break, and then the remainder, but you'll get a break kind of in there. So for roles that you'll be applying for, you'll have 2 managers, and then you'll typically have 2 peers that will interview you. Your managers at the manager level, they will focus on 3 to 4 leadership principles each. So there's 2 interviews there that you could touch on 6 to 8 leadership principles out of the 16. Your 2 peers will each focus on technical skills, and then they'll also include 1 or 2 leadership principles in that hour as well. So you do only have 1 hour with each person. So you can imagine if I'm interviewing and I've been assigned 4 leadership principles, I'm probably asking one question from each leadership principle. Maybe I have time to be, depending on how the interview goes, to ask a second question on, one of the other ones. But really understand what the leadership principles are, and then be able to share that information in relation to that. So there's really 2 types of questions that we ask during those interview process. One will be behavioral based questions, and those are all your leadership principle questions, right? Tell me about a time when, give me an example of when, tell me about a challenge that you had, tell me about how you reacted when, those kinds of things, right? So not going to be easy questions like, tell me how good you are in, networking, or how well do you understand, process improvement or something like that, right? It's going to be really experiential, behavioral based questions. The other type of questions are technical questions, and those are to make sure that you're technically meeting or exceeding the bar for the role that you are applying for. So let's kind of dig in a little bit into how you might prepare for an Amazon interview. So first thing I encourage you to do with Amazon and any organization really is to research that organization's value and mission and really think about how it aligns to your personal values, right? Is that really a company that you can be proud or feel good about working for, that you can be fully engaged and bought into where that organization's going, what they're trying to accomplish? Because if you're not a good alignment at that level, you're going to struggle and not feel really good about going to work every day. And who wants to get up every day dreading like going to work, right? So make sure that you have good alignment with Amazon's values mission. Research the role, really understand what that role means. The job title at Amazon isn't always really descriptive about the scope of that role and what it might typically be called in other industries. Practice behavioral questions, right? And so here's where I'm going to ask you, use ChatGPT, right, to simulate questions. And I gave you an example here of a prompt. So while I can't share with you and our actual interview questions, I enter this chat or this prompt into ChatGPT, and I did it for multiple leadership principles. And I'm telling you, if you will prepare and answer those questions that ChatGPT gives you, you will be well prepared for your interview. So, as example, what are examples of Amazon's interview questions for the customer obsession leadership principle? It returned, I think, 10 different questions, right? Example questions. And as I read through those, I was thinking, if somebody actually prepared this way, they'd be really well prepared for the actual interview. So the other thing I really encourage you to do is really simulate the interview process by using Zoom or any other conferencing app, and hit record and then read the question like the person was asking you that, and then talk through the video chat. Make sure your video's on so you can see how your facial expressions and how you would actually respond, because most of our interviews right now are still virtual. And so you will be in a virtual setting having your interview. So you want to make sure, you're not slouching, you're sitting up, you're smiling, you're looking at the camera and not just looking down the whole time. And practice responding to that, and then hit stop when you're done and then rewatch it. All right. That will really help you prepare. In your mind, if you just go over your notes and your bullet points, you're like, okay, I'm going to hit on this, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that. It's very different when you actually practice and actually have to say the things that you've read and your bullet points to kind of guide you. You will find that maybe your bullet points don't allow you, or they're not in the right format to give you like a smooth transition from place to place, and you'll make some adjustments in your notes that will help you. So I find that to be really super helpful. So when you answer these questions, you're going to answer these in a star format, and I'm going to hand it back to Megan to kind of talk about and dive a little bit deeper. What do we mean by the star format?
Yep, awesome. Thank you. So when we were kind of prepping for this presentation, I was so happy to hear that Dustin and I were so aligned on the STAR method. This is one of the best methods I could ever recommend for interviewing. And again, it is going to be related towards those behavior style questions, situation-based questions, whatever you want to kind of phrase it there. But basically, the STAR method is this interview technique. You can kind of see it laid out here, where you lay out the situation. So in this, you're setting the scene of, where you were, whether it was a work environment, whether it was your college class, just kind of laying the base, the situation for the example that you're going to give. The next is your task. So here you're really describing what your specific responsibility or task was in this situation, especially when we're referring to whether it's a college project or a group project specifically. While it is good to talk about the overarching goal of the group, the task of the group, all of that, definitely include that. You want to make sure that during your STAR method answer and during your answer in general, you are focusing on your specific contributions as well. So after you set the situation and the task, next you're talking about the action. So here is where you're really explaining exactly the steps that you took to address the situation, whether it was a problem, whether it was an achievement, whatever it might be. Again, these are different situations, different situational questions, I should say, that you might be asked to address here. So After that, you are talking about the results. So again, sharing the outcomes of the actions that you achieved. So all in all, there you get your STAR method. So again, situation, task, action, result. We are going to do a little workshop example with this a little bit later. So hopefully some of you are feeling brave there, but again, this is really a great way to structure your responses. Make sure that you are speaking clearly and concisely, making sure that you have the opportunity to get all of the information out in a clean way versus just talking so much and not being sure if you focused on everything that you needed to focus on. Oh, what was this question here? It just is a very well-rounded response that you can pretty much attribute to almost any behavior style question that you are going to be given. And so I'll throw it back on over to Dustin, who's going to give some additional tips here in regards to the STAR method.
And can you leave it on that previous slide, Megan?
yeah.
I just kind of reinforce. So at Amazon, your recruiter is actually going to tell you, they're going to give you guidance to say, make sure during your interview loop that your responses are in the STAR format. They're going to tell you the STAR format. As an interviewer at Amazon, when I'm taking my notes, I'm taking my notes in STAR format, right? And so it's super important to really get a good grasp on doing this. And as Megan said, this will actually help you tell the story in a way that hits all the right highlights that you need to hit, right? And that you don't forget, anything. The other point I want to just reemphasize that Megan mentioned is about the things that you did, right? We get that rarely do any of us do things all 100% on our own, right? We are constantly collaborating. We're doing things with the team. So make sure that this is a time for you to say, I, me, like use those statements. This is what I did. I was responsible for such and such. So even if you're talking about like what the team did, make sure to include, and I was responsible for this piece of it, right? Because if you don't do that, if you say the team did this, it leaves the interviewer wondering, well, what were you responsible for? Was that the team that did that? Was that somebody else on the team that had that impact, or was that you that had that? So make that really clear. So,
Okay.
all right. So what you want to do during your interview with Amazon is you want to really highlight specific examples that demonstrate our leadership principles, right? So your recruiter is going to advise you which LPs that may be covered in your interview loop, right? So they're going to give you a list. And so we have 16. That list is probably going to include at least 12, right? So it's not like you're going to be like, oh, good, I only have like 4, right? So because you have at least 4 people, so you're probably going to have 8 to 12 leadership principles. But there's some that really don't so much apply for the role that you're going to be in. So those are some LPs that you won't have to really prepare for. The great thing, and I use that facetiously, is that your interviewer is not going to tell you what leadership principles their questions are about. Right. So they're not going to say, all right, I'm going to focus on customer obsession. And then you kind of get that mindset and go, okay, I need my customer obsession examples. Right. They are simply going to ask you a question, and you need to be able to understand the leadership principles enough to say, I got it. That's a question under this. Right. And then give that particular example that focuses on that. Now, understand that oftentimes your experiences will hit multiple leadership principles, right? So if you have an example, you can use it for multiple questions with different people, and focus in on the different parts of the leadership principle that are applicable to that. So don't feel like if you used a leadership principle, say Megan's your first interviewer in your first loop and she asks you a question and you use your really strong example, and then I'm your second one and I ask you another question and it still kind of relates to the other example, that you can't use it because you already shared that example with Megan. Feel free to use that same example, shift the focus to the leadership principle that I'm focusing on. Write out the bullet points, right? on your resume in a star format. And here's a template that I use. These are actually my notes when I interviewed, right? So these are like my examples under customer obsession. I had 2 or 3 examples for each leadership principle that I knew I was going to be interviewed on. I had my situation, I had the task that I had to do, had the actions that I took, and then I had the measurable results that came about from the actions that I took. These bullet points are what I talked about. I didn't write out every word I was going to say, but these are the bullet points that guided me through that process, right? One of the great things about having an online or virtual interview is you can have your Zoom or Chime or whatever platform is being used here, and you can have your Word document up to the side for your notes, so you can kind of scroll through and kind of use those things as a guide. What you don't want to do is stare at that and just like monotone, like read through the bullet points, right? Use that as a guide, because it's hard to remember all the points through all your experiences and examples that you may use.
Awesome. So like I mentioned, we are going to do a little star format exercise here. And I think it's one thing that's important to note when preparing your star answers, if you will, within the method. I think it's always going to depend really on what style learner you are and how you best prepare. I think there are people who, exactly as Dustin did it, he'll have his bulleted list. He knows it inside and out. Again, he's not going to be specifically reading from that. I think I operate a little bit in a different way. I like the bulleted list, but when I go in and actually prepare my answers ahead of time, just the way that I learn and the way that I remember, I would fully write down my sentences of my star format answer as if I was speaking them to an interviewer next to me. So I would write it down just because I'm one of those learners that I write it down and I commit it to memory a little bit more like that. So again, physically pen and paper is what I'm doing there. And then to Dustin's earlier point, I'm preparing that with a friend where I'm, sharing those answers, speaking them out loud, getting comfortable with how they sound. Again, it's not always going to be rigid, like the situation was this, the task was this. I think try to avoid that, make it feel natural a little bit, but that's kind of the way that I formatted or how I tend to prepare too. So it's even more emphasis on really put time and effort into the preparation to figure out how you are going to best utilize the star format as well before even kind of diving into some of those questions. But yeah, so in terms of our exercise here, so we have a question going on. We'd love to give you a couple minutes to, write down key points, write down your star format answer to this question here. We would love to get someone to share an example if possible. I know we're asking you to be brave here. But so here's your question. Describe a time when you delivered more than what the customer was expecting. So again, remember, a customer can be an external customer, an internal customer, your professor, your boss, your manager, anything like that. So we'll give maybe a minute or two. What do you think, Dustin?
I was going to say probably 5 minutes for them to
5
kind of
minutes? Okay.
think through that. First thing I want to ask, so here, if this is a question, describe a time when you delivered more than what the customer was expecting. What leadership principle do you think that is? Right? So that's going to be a customer obsession leadership principle. So, I mean, you could tell by that answer, right? So that one's pretty easy to kind of identify. But think about it from that perspective, an example that you've had either in your group projects that you've worked on, right? Or for an assignment, because some of you don't have formal jobs, right? Which is okay. That's not a bad thing. So feel free to rely on your experiences that you've had in different situations that might be outside of kind of formal work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we'll give you a couple minutes right now to go through that. Please, would really love some participation here. So appreciate in advance anyone who's willing to be brave with us and share once we get to that point. But we'll give you a couple minutes here to really get into it. Okay. Do we have anyone that wants to be brave and share their example here?
We have one here that says, I went to carry a patient to their car after they were discharged from the hospital. I don't know if that's in the exact form, but that's one of the people that just responded.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing that in the chat now. Yeah, if you're more comfortable putting it in the chat, that's fine. I think that's a great example of kind of a starting place of, the situation. Or I guess the overall thing that happened, if you will. I think there's ways to take it and apply it a little bit more to the star format to give a little bit more details, per se, and kind of attribute to the storytelling, if you will. Dustin, I don't know if you had a comment on that one specifically.
Yeah, this is probably, a discharge, right, that took place. Give a little bit of context about the situation. Maybe this person didn't have anyone that was able to help them get there. I'd probably initially, if that's what you told me, I'd probably wonder, well, why wasn't there a wheelchair or that kind of thing, right? So talk about the situation. The task was maybe you needed to get them safely to their vehicle so they could, be fully discharged or get to the next appointment or extended care or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also on that one, the result maybe could be, how they were so grateful for what you did, taking the time out of your day, something like that. There's a way that you can kind of round it up nicely. Sounded like someone might have come off of mute. Was someone wanting to share? Do I have the permission to help you go off of mute?
Hi there. Hear me?
We
Yes.
can. Hey, awesome.
Hi. I love that you guys are so organized here. Thank you for doing this structure because it really makes it a lot easier, at least for me. So I wasn't really I like the structure to have the situation, the task, action, and results. I didn't have anything specifically prepared, but it's good enough guideline to follow. So for my situation, I could think of a couple different positions that I've dealt with as, so just a little bit of background on me. I just finished my PhD in psychology. So I'm branching over, coming from finance, investment world, lending, banking. And this is going to be a whole new situation for me. And I'm excited about going into like talent and development, because I was also a recruiter in the past life that I've had. So to follow this format, the situation would be a customer that needs some assistance. That's kind of like beyond my my parameters. I was a private banker at the time, and the customer needed some assistance with deposits and withdrawals on their accounts. And so I was able to help facilitate it. And the challenge is that the person was not on the account. So that's a big no-no for us. And come to find out, it was actually a lot more interesting because somebody in their family passed away. So we needed to process like the death certificate, and there's a lot of things that needed to happen so we could help facilitate and help the customer. So I was able to pull the branch manager, also the teller, the supervisor in that side of the bank, and we were able to really accommodate the customer. Come to find out that there's also some investment opportunities there. So really, we tackled what the customer came in for first. We needed to make sure that their needs are met and the situation was cared for. And then it was the action that was done at the time, although it wasn't really within my parameters to do because I was in the private bank. I had all the key persons to help her out. And when that was facilitated, we were able to really gain the trust of that customer. And moving forward, we were able to also establish deeper relationships, and we were able to get like their investments and things like that. So we could help them on a deeper capacity, like trust, and things like that. So that's how I would answer that question.
That really is a great example. It actually touches on multiple leadership principles with Amazon, right? So obviously customer obsession, right? One of the other things that stands out to me in that example is ownership, right? So even though that particular ask from that customer was out of scope from your role, you could have easily just said, hey, go get in this line, and they're the ones that help you with it, right? But you maintained ownership of it. You shepherd the whole engagement, right? To make sure that that customer was taken care of. So you showed really good bias for action. To earn trust is another one, right? So you earn trust with that customer to let them know that you were there to take care of them and meet their needs. And then also opened up other opportunities to increase engagement with that customer. So a great example. And if you think about this, if you were to kind of like jot those notes down, right, to kind of formalize that was so you could recall it, that's going to take some time, right? And so if you think about, if you have 12 leadership principles that you're trying to prepare for, you want to have a couple of examples for each one, you're looking at around 20 to 24 examples that you're kind of mapping out. I know when I prepared for my interview, I probably spent about 40 hours preparing for that interview and kind of getting, my previous history and that kind of stuff and my examples of different things together in that format, where I could really talk about it in that STAR format instead of it being, a bullet point on my resume that's really easy to, kind of blurt out. So I say that because at Amazon, these interviews are not something that you can just kind of wing it, right? Just kind of show up and like, you might be a really dynamic person, but I'm telling you, even if you are a dynamic person and can usually wing things, you will not do well in an Amazon interview if that's your approach. So really take the time to prepare for it. It's set aside, hours for you to go over it. You're probably going to need multiple sessions to do it, right? Because you're not going to be able to just sit like straight and like jot everything down for every example. But really great example. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Thanks so
you.
much. I think we probably have time for another one. I know I saw a hand raise. Jovenia,
awesome.
saying that right, I apologize. Nope, you might be muted.
Yeah, Jovenia.
Okay.
There you go.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Jovina Britton. I'm so sorry. I'm actually at the ED with my daughter. She's okay. She's with my other daughter, so I had to step out. So I'm sorry I didn't write it in the STAR format, but I did put the example in there when I had went beyond helping a patient that was discharged of customer service, which I always do. So that was one of my examples. And this person had a family member with them. And so they didn't want to go back with the ambulance. They wanted to drive their own car back, but the person that brought them back couldn't drive back because they just taken some medication. So the patient was okay, but this patient, had problems with their leg and driving, but they was able to drive with the opposite leg. So to make a long story short, the patient had to go be wheeled to the wheelchair and to be the driver of the family member that couldn't drive. So anyway, I had to, stop what I was doing at my job. By the way, I am a nurse technician, and I'm in school now here at GCU for be a public health nurse. But anyway, I gave you a little background of what I do, but I do customer service every day. I'm also a clerk at my desk. I do the clerk, and then I do patient care too. So I do half and half until I finish school. But anyway, I was helping that patient that could not walk with her family members. So they had to use the wheelchair to get on the driver's side. So I had to leave my station to let my coworkers know to do that. So I went above and beyond. This is what I do. I love great customer service. I'm also the ambassador here on my floor where I work at. So I do a lot of background of that. I love people person, just going beyond, making sure that the patient needs are met and beyond while they're here, even when they get ready to leave, even they going in by the ambulance or if they going by the car. So I was able to, execute that for the patient. And then they written a long letter back to my boss and to the CEO about that. So I do a lot of that, and I just enjoy it because it's a passion of taking care of people when they come here and make sure they're getting the needs met. Actually, like I said, I'm here with my daughter, and they're doing the same thing that I do when I'm actually here at work.
Nice, great example. That really shows your customer session and dedication, right? And making sure that their needs are met. And the result of that really was probably a more dedicated customer to come back, right? If they need medical care again, they're going to be more than likely to want to come back to where the organization you work at, because they've received such great care. And they wrote that letter, right? Not a lot of
Yeah, they
people write letters to complain.
Yeah.
But not very many people write letters, that really compliment and tell somebody they did a great job. So really good example.
Yes,
Awesome.
indeed.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing your examples.
All right, so now let's dig into the other types of questions, which is really the technical interview tips. So what you want to do, depending on the role that you're interviewing for, right? So practice relevant technical concepts for that role that you're interviewing for. For example, if you are interviewing for a cloud support engineer on my team, I want them to know that you are strong in foundational network concepts and operating systems. Some of the teams that I've led are like containers and IAC and CDA. Those are in the DevOps space. So I also want to know that you have a good foundation in DevOps. You understand what that is. You understand the typical themes and concepts in that. If you're applying for a cloud support engineer in database or a database admin or something like that, you want to make sure that you have solid foundation technical skills in database security, for example, right? So familiarize yourself with really common technical interview questions and practice solving them effectively. You can also use, for example, network connectivity issues, right? Like if this is kind of one of the foundational things for a cloud support engineer is to understanding network connectivity issues. That's foundational in cloud computing. So understand what ping is, what traceroute commands are, DNS, those kinds of things, along with how and when you would use those tools, right? And a lot of the scenarios will say it may be something like to kind of test if you understand networking. It might be your web server is no longer accessible by your customers. How do you approach solving that problem, right? And so do you understand the networking foundations behind that to make sure that you actually have a data path that could hit your network server, right? And walking through that. So demonstrate your technical knowledge and your ability to break down complex technical problems, right? Explain your thought process through, right? So if you say, hey, here's how I would tackle this, because I would run this command, or I would check this first because I'm trying to determine, do they even have a network connectivity? Is that the issue? Or maybe they do have network connectivity and maybe it's a web server problem. So you're trying to walk the interviewer through your thought process of how you tackle that problem and how you keep breaking it down and narrowing in on the root cause. One thing to understand is our technical interviewers don't just ask you a technical question, you answer it, and then they move on to the next technical question, right? They will continue to dig deeper and deeper and deeper because they're trying to gauge your technical expertise and how deep you can go. Almost every question, the interviewee, the person interviewing, will tap out. Like they get to a point where they just they don't know, right? So don't feel like you're just bombing the interview, because like every technical question they ask, they keep going deeper and deeper, and you get to a point where you're like, I'm tapping out, like I just don't know the answer. We do this because if your technical acumen is greater than the requirements for that role, we up level people. So if you're applying for, say, for example, a cloud support engineer 1, but your technical acumen is really at the bar of a cloud support engineer 2, and you applied for a cloud support engineer 1, we will offer you the cloud support engineer 2 role, right? We won't say, oh, great, we got like we got a CSE2 for the price of a CSE1, right? So that's not what we do. So that's why in that technical interview process, we continue to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And don't feel bad. More times than not, the majority of the time, the person interviewing taps out before our technical folks tap out. Although sometimes the interviewer can go deeper than the person that's interviewing them, but which is okay. But I just tell you that to not feel bad, because sometimes you get in your own head, right? And you start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just bombing this interview. I'm not doing well at all. Every question they're throwing at me, I'm okay for a bit. And then I can't go any deeper. So just know that understanding is there, as we're really trying to gauge your technical depth on that. All right, so again, I'm going to encourage you to use ChatGPT. What an awesome tool this is for you, right? And so if you put in these types of prompts, for example, networking and operating systems are like foundational to pretty much any technical role in Amazon. So if what are examples of Amazon's network technical interview questions for cloud support engineers, or for whatever role you're applying for, right? So I put these in there. And I'm telling you, if you are able to respond to those questions, I think each one gave me at least 10 questions. I'm like, that's going to prepare you really well, right? Now, ChatGPT didn't give me the answers, right? So, but it gave me the questions, and I could look those up or to make sure that I could answer those. That will really help you prepare to be able to respond to the types of questions. So make sure you hit networking, operating systems, if you're applying for a technical role, and then also include what is that domain specialty. Like if you're going to be a containers engineer, that's DevOps. So you want to be able to hit those typical themes and questions and concepts in DevOps or database or security or operating systems or whatnot, whatever the type of role is that you're applying for. All right, so now that we've kind of touched on, behavioral, which are a little bit more ambiguous than the technical questions, I'm going to hand it back to Megan to really talk about just some general interview tips that are great for Amazon and actually great for any organization that you are applying for.
Yeah. Absolutely. So getting into some of those general tips, again, we've really gone into the nitty gritty of behavioral, of technical, of STAR method, which are all so important. I think one of the biggest things with preparing for an interview is trying to anticipate, again, some of those questions that you might be asked, or kind of how things are going to go. So that ChatGPT example, I think, was so awesome, and a great tool that we have to use nowadays. But in terms of general interview tips, again, be ready early. This is also going to include not just physically being ready early, but also entering into the interview early. Oftentimes, again, we are in more of a digital age, so oftentimes it is going to be a virtual interview. So, showing up 10 minutes early or so to make sure when your Wi-Fi is working, you're in the right spot. You can kind of take a breather before the interviewer actually pops in. And that's going to be the same for if it is in person. If it is in person, I'd even say try to get there even earlier, just because you can never really account for traffic depending on where you're located. So just always have that plan in motion. If you have to sit in the car for a second while you're waiting to walk into your interview, that's okay. It's better than being late. If it is virtual, again, you can have your notes pulled up on your computer right there for you, so you can kind of easily access them. I would even say if it is in person too, bring your notebook in, one, to take notes. Also have your personal notes on there, that's fine too. And then again, have your questions that you want to ask on that notebook as well. And that's even something, I don't know if we have a bullet point on it, but make sure you have, I always like to say, at least 5 to 8 questions, if not more, prepared for the interviewer after the interview. The example I always like to give is actually in my role with BrookSource, that when I was interviewing for it, they did their general questions that maybe lasted 15 minutes. And then they turned to me and said, what are your questions? Looking back at it now, it makes a lot of sense because I was interviewing for a recruiter. I'm supposed to be able to ask questions and recruit and talk to people. So it makes a lot of sense now. But at the time, I was so glad that I had a good 10, 15 questions prepared. So it felt like I was kind of running the interview at that point, but it's always good to have more questions prepared, even that you expect you'll need, just because half them you'll probably go through during the interview. And you don't want to necessarily be that person that when they say, oh, what questions do you have for me? You say, nope, I'm good. Because truthfully, there's no possible way you could ever know everything about the company, know everything about the role. So you'll always have questions there. Have water next to you. Super important. It's totally okay. Yeah, I know we've both been drinking our water as we're doing this presentation too. It's totally okay to take a sip of your water as you're kind of going through it. It's better than, you know, getting a frog in your throat or something like that. Sit up straight in your chair, check your background. I have seen many individuals, candidates that I'm interviewing that show up and you can see it's their bed in the background. Sometimes it's even their unmade bed in the background. There's, you know, cats, animals walking all around. Totally okay. We know, especially if, you know, it's in your home office or your home. Again, we're in a digital age, those things are going to kind of pop up, but really do your best to be in a siloed environment, a quiet environment, maybe a blank wall behind you. Use the blur filter on Zoom if you want to, something like that, but really check your background prior to. And that's a great way to know how you're going to appear on camera too. Smile. So this can be, this is a good tip for both phone screening and those virtual or in-person interviews. Some of you might have heard it before, but you sound way more excited, way more enthused, way more alive, if you will, when you're actually smiling through your words versus, you know, the monotoned, like frowning or just kind of doing your general thing. So smiling is actually a great way to, one, improve your own confidence, but then also just really get it across to the interviewer that you are ecstatic to be there. You're really, really, you know, passionate about the opportunity. Next is be confident about sharing your experiences. I always say this probably in every single workshop that I do with GCU or any university. Your experiences can come from a multitude of places. This can be volunteer. This can be classroom education, capstone projects, passion projects. This can be actual work experience in the industry. There are so many different places that you can really pull your experiences from and really pull those STAR method answers as well from there. So be confident in the abilities and the experiences that you have as an individual. And then have data to back up those accomplishments as well. Always be prepared for the follow-up question on anything you say. Always be prepared to talk about anything and everything that is on your resume. So don't put it on there if you don't have data to back it up or a story that kind of contributes to it specifically. Feel free to ask the interviewer for clarification if you don't fully understand the question. I think this is a great tip to, one, make sure that you are actually getting to the root of what they are asking. Also, it can be a good tool to kind of take a breather. Everyone gets a little bit nervous in interviews, you know, you start talking too fast. You want to just make sure that you're getting to the root of it. You're thinking a mile a minute. So it's okay to almost use that as a tactic too, to slow down, really think about their question and start to think about your answer again while they're, you know, clarifying what they might be looking for. I wouldn't recommend asking for clarification on every single question, but it is there as a tool that you can use. And then again, that goes into the next piece there. It is okay to think about your response. So don't feel like you immediately have to have the perfect STAR method answer, the perfect answer to a technical question. If you have it, that's awesome. If you need a second, that's also okay. We are humans, and at the end of the day, this is a human-based world so far. Again, with AI, who knows? But it's really okay to be able to show that you know, need a minute to think about it or say, hey, that's a really good question. Give me a second to really formulate a great response. So general tips there. Dustin, did you have anything else to add there?
I think I would just add silence is okay, right? So if the interviewer asks you a question, and you just pause and think about it, that's okay, right? Like, don't feel like you have to fill the air with noise, right? Interviewers want to know that you're giving a really thoughtful response, and that you're giving the response that you believe is the best that matches your background. And we can't recall those things like instantaneously, right? So it's okay to just have some silence in the interview. So
Absolutely. Perfect. So conclusion, Dustin, do you want to take it away here?
yeah, sure. So hopefully after this session, you understand the Amazon interview process. You understand how to prepare for it. You understand the STAR format. I think that's probably one of the most important things, and you can use that for Amazon or any organization. It helps you really formulate your responses in a really clear and concise and meaningful way. And that you understand the different types of interview questions that you'll be asked, so that you can properly prepare for those. And I hope to see you as Amazonians one day in the future. So,
There you go. Awesome. Thank you everyone so much. Have a great rest of your day.
bye everyone.